The member from Richmond challenged the member from Colchester North to get and speak. I hear the member from Richmond say that the member from Cumberland South and Cumberland North should stand in their spot and speak on behalf of this. I believe from the press that I follow in those local papers in that area, and one of those papers I still receive, those members are listening to their constituents, and they are bringing up those issues. So it's not necessarily a time to grandstand on what issue got us elected to this House, or to bring forward why we would look at an issue such as Sunday shopping. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's look at it pretty carefully. I want you to know that a typical Sunday in my home does not involve Sunday shopping. It does not. Yet, there is an opportunity in a growing constituency that I represent, and the member from Halifax Clayton Park and I perhaps could debate about this, but is the Bears Lake Park in the constituency of Timberley Prospect, or is it in Halifax Clayton Park? There's no voters there, Mr. Speaker, so let me tell you, it's not a place where I've ever gone canvassing. Yet. But will the challenge come that on a particular Sunday forthcoming? Let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, what will happen when, not if, when Sunday shopping happens in this province. There will be traffic jams in that shopping mall, in that shopping center at Bears Lake Park, as there will be in Micmac, as there will be in some of the other major centers. And what will be the results? Will you be able to shoot a gun down the streets of Bridgewater? Not that I encourage you to do that at any time. I take back that expression. It's not a good one. Will the streets of Bridgewater be empty? Will the streets of Bridgewater be empty because the people from Bridgewater have all come up the South Shore? Let's go shopping. We'll go to Bears Lake Park. Will the people in Whitney Pier say, we are going to go to Halifax? We're going to make a long weekend of it. We'll visit the grandkids out in Timberley, and because there's a lot of great Cape Bretoners who live in the constituency of Timberley Prospect. And then we will go to Bears Lake Park to go shopping. What will be the result if Sunday shopping, when Sunday shopping, the effect it's going to have in some of those other areas? Now, will it encourage more money to be spent? You know, I heard the member from Cape Breton Nova stand in his place and speak about the fact that the stash he had under his bed. Mr. Speaker, I want to clarify that. That's a monetary stash that he has under his bed, apparently. Will he have more money for his wife and his son to go shopping necessarily on a Sunday? Or will be that the same amount of dollars that are spent the other 6 days in the week when stores are available? Mr. Speaker, the concern that I have revolves around the value of plebiscites. Now, I'm looking forward to, as the bill proceeds, to the various changes in this House. I'm looking forward to the effect that will happen to law amendments when we hear from municipal officials on why there is a plebiscite on a provincial issue attached to a municipal election. Now that, after all, Mr. Speaker, is an imposition on municipal politicians. Municipal elections have many other issues to deal with. Many other issues of a local nature, of real concern to grassroots politics. Now, I've heard the member from Dartmouth North, based upon his municipal experience. I've heard the member from Cape Breton, Victoria, the Lakes. I've heard him speak on their past connection to municipal politics. It seems to me unfair to have a plebiscite attached to a provincial issue that is going to be taking place during a municipal election. That will be, in my opinion, a distraction during these elections. That will be a distraction that is unfortunate for these candidates who are standing for municipal election. A plebiscite on one issue, as opposed to a plebiscite on another issue, is not the way we were elected to this place. We're elected to make decisions. We're elected to have our votes. We're elected to stand in our place and then to explain to our constituents why we voted one way or another on whatever the issue is. To consult Nova Scotians on this issue is a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. Now, I have heard and I have solicited opinions from the people who live in my constituency, Mr. Speaker. And I want you to know that in many cases, the high school students, some of them that live in my community, that I've had in schools over the years, are looking at this as an opportunity for more employment. So in the growing constituency that I represent, many of the people are saying it's a convenience, we should have the choice, and it's here anyway, so when is it going to happen, Bill? The concern that I have, of course, Mr. Speaker, revolves around the fact that will these workers have the protection that is necessary for them? Everyone in Nova Scotia, we all know of the increased challenge of juggling our busy schedules. We all know that we're working longer hours, that we have many commitments, with mothers and fathers both working at different jobs. There is, after all, the need for family time, but there's also the need for shopping. Now, this government made a wise decision this past Sunday, a wise decision that was well received considering the circumstances in the aftermath of Hurricane Juan. And Mr. Speaker, as you are well aware, the opportunity was that other stores could also be open. I mean, stores like hardware stores, building supplies stores, major grocery stores were open. But other stores took advantage of that, and they also remained open. Perhaps it wasn't a real necessity to have the local sports store open, but it was an opportunity for shopping to be made available to people in the constituency of Timberley Prospect. Now, I want you to know, Mr. Speaker, that particular Sunday, out of interest, at halftime in the football game, if you really want to know, I took the opportunity to see what is the response to people going out on Sunday shopping. Now, the people that attend the church that we attend in the community that I represent, did they deliberately say, absolutely not going to touch Sunday shopping? Absolutely not the case, Mr. Speaker. A couple of the people that attend the church that I attend were out Sunday shopping because in this case, they had to be there, although they were not just in the grocery store, they were in another part of the mall picking up some convenience items that I don't think we can necessarily determine as a real necessity. But those people made that choice. Now, I've heard the members of the Liberal Party take various pot shots, as they are always prone to do on any piece of legislation at the NDP. I have always heard the members of the third party say they flip-flop on this and they flip-flop on that. We have been very clear through this issue. This is a complex issue, Mr. Speaker. This is a complex issue, Mr. Speaker, and we have concerns about worker protection that we do not feel comfortable with at this stage. So that when the time comes as we go through to law amendments and as we go through the clause-by-clause debate that takes place in the Committee of the Whole House here, there will be the opportunity for the members of this party to bring forward the types of debates, to bring forward the types of amendments, to look at the types of changes that we feel must be included in this sort of legislation before we are going to support it. Now, if that's what it takes to get us into the 21st century, and you know, that particular comment, Mr. Speaker, I find offensive. I find that offensive because of the fact that we have across the border in Moncton, neighbors of the communities that we grew up in, Mr. Speaker. They are suddenly in the 21st century, and because you come across the Chanterbar Marsh, we're a backwater in Nova Scotia? Is that the implications of the members of the Liberal Party? Is that what they're saying to Nova Scotians? Wake up, you're backward, and unless you have Sunday shopping, you're not in the 21st century? Mr. Speaker, that's the wrong message to send to Nova Scotians. That's the wrong message to say to them. But the concern that I have is when the results of the plebiscite are forthcoming, and there is a major division, and let's use this example. Let's say that the people in Cape Breton vote heavily against on this plebiscite, heavily against any form of Sunday shopping. And they have given the thumbs down to Sunday shopping for some of the reasons that the member from Cape Breton Nova so eloquently brought forward earlier. And I hope you know that in Whitney Pier, the Ukrainian church and the Polish church and those various other churches in that community, the religious life of that community is integral to what they feel towards this and other issues. But if the people in Cape Breton vote heavily against this in a plebiscite, and the people of the HRM vote heavily in favor of this result, what happens? What happens in that situation? Now, the people in Amherst have real concerns, and the member from the member from Cumberland North, and the member from Cumberland South and Colchester North have been listening to the concerns of the business community in their communities. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that's why we were elected. That's why you were unanimously elected. That's why you've been re-elected. But when the plebiscite results come in and a provincial decision is made, a binding plebiscite, is that a word that's missing in this, Mr. Speaker? A binding plebiscite? It concerns me that we could have one community pitted against another community. We could have one region pitted against another region. I'm well aware, Mr. Speaker, I am well aware of how the many young couples who live in my community, and many of them are from the Cape Breton area, they would look forward to having their parents, the grandparents of their children, come to Timberley to visit them at that time, and then use the excuse, well, you're here, you might as well go Sunday shopping besides. Now, what is that doing for the corner store in Whitney Pier? What is that doing for the local business that is outside the economic hub of this province, which is the HRM? Now, Mr. Speaker, in the travels that I have around this province, and some of it revolves around various concerns, and let me tell you, I know the member from Queens will be interested in this. What's the reception that I receive in Queens? You know, I'm the one who made the comments about the particular back roads in Queens, and the reaction is, Halifax gets everything. Halifax has Neptune. Halifax has the Mooseheads. That's the hockey team, Mr. Speaker, not the other thing. Halifax gets everything. Why are they always complaining when they have a few gravel roads? Well, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, here it will be again, that with Sunday shopping in ridings that I am fortunate enough to be shared with in this caucus. Because, you know, when we look at the politics of this, the NDP caucus and where we represent generally is highly in favor, from what I understand from the polls, of Sunday shopping. It is not going to be, in the growing constituency that I represent, a hot-button issue. People know that I am not a Sunday shopper. People know that if the convenience is there, that doesn't mean if I am in a situation that what I might need on a Sunday shopping event. A hockey stick, which I've broken on Saturday night over, over someone's, let's just say I broke the hockey stick. Do I have to go Sunday shopping to get another one? Yes. Mr. Speaker, the opportunity would be there in my constituency. But is someone, after all, in return, looking at the value of the workers who are working in that particular sports shop? Are they going to be protected? Are they going to have the opportunity to decide, I don't want to work on Sunday, as they say to the manager of that sports shop. I would rather not put those hours in for one reason or another reason. That, Mr. Speaker, is the key issue that we have brought up a number of times with the NDP. Part-time workers receive few or no benefits as it is now. Over 20,000 Nova Scotians who get paid a minimum wage on which they struggle to get by really are not going to benefit unless there are major revisions to this piece of legislation or other types of legislation that could be brought forth within this House to protect workers who could be involved in Sunday shopping. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have a few other comments before I wrap up. And as I said to the member from Halifax, or we said to the member from Halifax Clayton Park before, I love to bring the concerns of my constituents to the attention of this House. I love to have the opportunity to bring to your attention, Mr. Speaker, the concerns on whatever issues that the people on the doorsteps or the people have sent to me in way of emails or faxes, concerns. But on the issue of Sunday shopping, Mr. Speaker, I have not heard those number of complaints. I have not heard of those number of people who are concerned about the fact. The reaction has been this. In a perfect world, perhaps Sunday shopping should not exist. But Mr. Speaker, as you well know, this is not a perfect world. This is not an opportunity to in any other way say that this part of the province that I represent is open-minded to Sunday shopping, and with protections to workers, I look forward to this piece of legislation moving through to law amendments and looking at the corrections that can be made as this piece of legislation continues through our House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to speak on Bill number 2. First of all, Mr. Speaker, in regards to the issues that this bill puts forward, I guess I'm not sure if I can talk an hour on this issue. I'll try my best to go as long as I can. People are shaking their heads already. No, please don't talk for an hour. The reason I probably can't talk for an hour is because during my 4-week election campaign in the hot days of summer, I didn't talk a lot about Sunday shopping. It just wasn't a topic that seemed to come up in the conversations on the doorsteps. Well, I guess in a lot of times they had other things that were on their mind that were more pressing. Issues like seniors' health care, the high cost of that to seniors in my area. Seniors were very concerned that they were being stripped of their assets, that they felt intimidated by the lack of respect they were being given by the enforcement units that were being sent out by the government to their homes. I heard many people speak to me in regards to the HST and wondering if we formed government, would we do something about that? And certainly we did want to remove that from the necessities of life, such as children's medicine, heating fuel. Mr. Speaker, a lot of folks in Dartmouth East, and I actually heard this on the doorstep, were cutting back on their prescription drugs. They were cutting pills in half. I heard all kinds of horror stories like that. People are really concerned about winter coming and being able to meet the requirements to heat their homes. So certainly removing the HST from family necessities was something that a lot of people agreed with during the campaign. Also, Mr. Speaker, tuition fees continue to be something that's impacting a lot of the young people in Dartmouth East. Post-secondary education is almost unreachable in certain circumstances. It is a burden for students to pay this back, especially, Mr. Speaker, when they're working for a lowly minimum wage and then also being burdened with trying to find some form of transportation to and from work. A lot of young people in Dartmouth East can no longer drive their cars. They can't afford to insure them. I have actually had instances where families have said, well, we had put together some money, we were going to buy our son or daughter a vehicle, but when we looked into insurance, it was just too outlandish and they couldn't afford to do that. The bus scheduling is not always appropriate for getting people to and from work, especially in the retail sector, because, for instance, I'm not sure if I'll get this exactly right, but say Walmart, that store closes at a certain hour and the staff are expected to stay, restock the shelves, clean up, do these sorts of things, and a lot of time when they get off work, the buses have stopped running. There's no bus service there. In Port Wallace, there's I think maybe two or three buses on Sunday running now. That's going to be an issue if Sunday shopping does occur. We're going to have to put on some more buses to get people to and from. So I'm just hoping that the government has taken all these things into consideration. I did touch on the fact that auto insurance definitely is an issue with a lot of people of all ages in Dartmouth East. Rates rose over 65% in 1 year. A lot of people have laid the cars up, have gone from having 2 cars, which I know, is a luxury in a way, but a lot of professionals go in two different directions when they go to work, and therefore like to have two vehicles. They're picking kids up after school. They're taking them to ballet lessons, guitar lessons, all these sorts of things, Mr. Speaker. Taking money from drivers and giving it to insurance companies was definitely something that a lot of folks wanted to speak to me about. I actually had a man come up to me at just out of the blue when I had told him who I was, and I wasn't actually canvassing at the time, to ask for my help because he was quite upset that the CEO of the insurance company in which he had stocks in, I believe he told me, was just being paid a $3.1 million bonus. And his stocks, his profit margins were going down. So he wanted to know what the NDP could do to help him in that case. Hear, hear. Of course, I didn't quite know what to tell him. People want a driver-owned nonprofit plan. Hear, hear. They want something that's going to work for them, not against them. It would take 6 months to set up. So these are some of the things that, when I was going door-to-door canvassing, the issues that popped up, and I tried to provide the proper information. A lot of times we had to mail this information out, drop it off on doorsteps. Sometimes, I tried to provide it as best I could at the moment. People at Dartmouth East, told me that they wanted rates that would reflect themselves, their driving record, their vehicle. They didn't want to be discriminated because of their age, their gender, or their marital status. Mr. Speaker, another issue that came up in Dartmouth East was the issue of providing a community center for some of the children and youth in that area. Mr. Speaker, these were just some of the issues, and I know, some of them maybe don't involve the topic, and I'll try to get to the point where I'm going with that. But they are issues that people wanted to talk to me about. Certainly, there were the odd people that wanted to talk about Sunday shopping. I recall one conversation where the parents, they were quite concerned. Their daughter was attending post-secondary education, and she was working a part-time job also, and she wanted to be able to spend Sunday with her parents, and they were quite concerned. In fact, they had asked what the NDP stand was on Sunday shopping, and I tried to provide that. They were concerned that even though there may be laws set up to perhaps protect workers, that workers would still feel intimidated and perhaps feel that they could not speak out, and they would therefore work on days in which they really didn't want to work, these days, these hours. This is definitely an issue with a lot of people in Dartmouth East. Another woman was actually in favor of Sunday shopping because she was used to it in other provinces, and she was used to starting a project on Saturday and perhaps running out of part of the equipment that was needed to fix that project. So she said she missed Sunday shopping. The dilemma, I guess, Mr. Speaker, is what's the problem? The problem is that, yes, Sunday shopping is inevitable in this province, but we must have legislation that protects our workers. Support for Sunday retail hours has been rising in urban areas, and it rises even higher when it is paired up with legislation to protect workers. However, what about the other percentage of people who oppose Sunday shopping? Many retail businesses don't want Sunday shopping. Many small retail shops say they will not make enough additional money to cover the costs of opening 7 days a week. Mr. Speaker, who is really behind the push for Sunday shopping? Perhaps the push is really coming from the big retailers themselves, which certainly have greater resources to work with and could perhaps even push a small retail out of business. Do we want to become a city of mega stores, or do we want to retain some of the character we already have right across HRM and the province? For example, Mr. Speaker, many people enjoy going to Spring Garden Road, especially in summertime. There's small shops there, cafes, street vendors, restaurants, tourist shops. There's plenty of things to do on Spring Garden Road. How about trying to bring back some of the areas in our cities that have been neglected in favor of the mega malls. For example, downtown Dartmouth. How about refacing some of our older buildings, providing low-cost loans to entrepreneurs? Revitalization would be great down in that area. We have to think about stopping the sprawl. I know when I drive home, it's just, you just feel like, are they going to, when are they going to stop sticking these malls up? Small meeting areas within new subdivisions, perhaps even the way in which subdivisions are designed, Mr. Speaker. HRM is in the planning process, and I think we're going to see some good ideas come out of there. Maybe subdivisions that were self-contained and had small shops in which our local youth could work close to home. We don't always need a mall to provide services. Traffic is horrible now, Mr. Speaker. I mean, what's going to happen, if everybody's open on Sunday? It's just going to be like, well, it is. It'll be another work day, and we're all going to be fighting our way through traffic, whereas at least one day of the week you can get from point A to point B, or maybe go visit somebody and not have to drag yourself through, all these traffic jams. I mean, that's going to impact on, a negative feeling within people's minds. Which sort of brings me back to, the question of what kind of a city do we want to be, Mr. Speaker? Do we want to grow at any expense? Do we want to leave behind a lifestyle that we are now beginning to see eroded? Mr. Speaker, our older neighborhoods are already in disrepair. There's businesses closing down. You see windows boarded up. Apartment buildings are being boarded up in certain areas of Dartmouth. I think we're seeing some of the donut effect, where the center is dying out and we're spreading out around it, and we're driving farther out to get to our homes and the malls that surround us. And when I say surround us, sometimes you feel like you're surrounded. I mean, you can drive by, for example, Penhorn Mall. There used to be trees across from there. There's nothing worse. They start to slowly rip the trees down. They put in more houses. The next thing you know, you drive by 2 days later, every tree is gone, more houses. Do we all want to look the same? Do all of our communities want to look the same, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, small business management is something I think we need to look at. Many small businesses are run by the owner-manager, who will more than likely bear the brunt of this Sunday shopping. He can't afford to hire another manager, an assistant manager. There's a small profit margin in a lot of these small businesses already. They're already working long hours, and they're competing with larger franchises. To say that there will be a law to protect stores and malls from being forced to open is not all that it seems. Stores that compete for the same shoppers in the same mall, for example, will undoubtedly stay open. Just because the law says you don't have to open, you can be guaranteed every store in that mall will be open. Because if you build up a clientele and they're used to going to a certain store, and then that store is not open, you're going to go somewhere else, and you might not come back. And I have heard from different small businesses on that actual issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, larger retail giants will be able to sustain losses that occur on Sundays. However, the small businesses do not have the same resources. Also, they are concerned that they will only be selling goods that would otherwise have been purchased on another day of the week anyway. They're not going to be any farther ahead. People will shop ahead of time, maybe, instead of going out Thursday night after work, you might go out on Sunday. Doesn't mean you're going to be spending extra money. It's the same amount of money. Mr. Speaker, larger retail stores have a greater pool of staff to take on the extra work, but the smaller retail stores do not. They don't have these assistant managers, and I'm not sure where this pool of willing workers to fill in the gap for one day a week are going to come from. Mr. Speaker, new money. Do we think that suddenly there will be a new pot of money that will magically appear, that people will be able to spend on Sundays? The same amount of money that is available now for Monday to Saturday is not going to change. I mean, there's only so much money to go around. Charities are vying for our money. The schools are vying for our money. Our children are always looking for something new. People set budgets, in this world. They have budgets for Christmas shopping, budgets for their birthday purchases, back to school. We've got budgets for everything. There's not going to be another pot of money. If there is, somebody, tell me about it. Where is it? Anyway, Mr. Speaker, current businesses that operate on Sundays. What will happen to all the businesses that have carved out a spot on Sunday already, Mr. Speaker? Businesses like the flea markets, I know, I'm getting, maybe it has been said before, but I'm going to say it again. Flea markets, they use the malls. Where are they going to go? I don't think, I'm not sure if they can afford to rent another large empty facility or where that facility would actually be. Many people, get extra income from the flea markets. There's people selling the crafts there that work, they might work all year making these things and then sell them, at certain times of the year, Mr. Speaker. Ethnic foods are sold there. It's a place for people to come and meet other people in their community, say hello, grab a coffee. Homegrown produce is sold there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another small business that operates on Sunday is the farmer's market. You can go over there and get your fresh oysters, fresh vegetables, organic growers are there, meat vendors. Fruit and vegetable stands are another one, Mr. Speaker. I mean, if, let's say, all the grocery stores are going to open all of a sudden, is, for example, Dave's on Mount Edward Road, is that going to impact on his business? I mean, that place, you can't even get in and out of that parking lot. It's so packed on a Sunday. So it's a very small little business. But again, he's carved out a niche there that he probably would like to keep. Also, the corner stores. I mean, out where I am, I know it's a AAA. They're everywhere. They're places that, you can meet up with your neighbors, go get a few things on Friday night when you're watching your video at home. What's going to happen to these businesses? Do we throw them out with the bathwater? Do we say, oh, well, on to something new, bigger, better? I mean, I think we have to think about these. Value Village, for example, they're open on Sunday. A lot of the charities collect used clothing and items from households, and then they are paid by the pound or whatever by Value Village, and then Value Village resells these things. So it's recycling in a form, and it raises money for a lot of charities. Mr. Speaker, I have actually had people since election, now that Sunday shopping is in the news more, ask me, well, if you're going to make us work, because a lot of people think they're going to have to work. That's really what's out there. That's the feeling, is that people feel they're going to be forced into working. They don't feel they're going to, the rights are going to be respected. And they're saying, if you're going to force us to work, then those government offices better stay open too. So, Mr. Speaker, are the government offices going to stay open? Are we going to be able to get our driver's license renewed? Are we going to be able to get a building permit, a burning permit? I mean, are we going to get our fishing and our hunting licenses? Is the government going to stay open too? Perhaps we should stay here on Sunday. Maybe we can work through Sunday. Hey, what do you think about that? No? Mr. Speaker, protection of workers. We must do everything we can to protect our young workers, especially who already work for minimum wage in many cases. They're feeling the burden, Mr. Speaker, of their student loans, their high auto insurance. We must not allow them to be victimized into working on Sundays against their will. Many times, young people do not feel they want to oppose their employers for fear of retaliation. How will we make sure that this doesn't happen, for sure? For example, the example that was put forward today with the casino staying open. Not everybody can assert their right, and that's why a lot of people have advocates trying to help them. Not everybody has the fortitude or whatever to do some of the things and press for their rights. And I've seen that when I was on the school board, and before that when I was on the home and school. You'd have parents come to you and say, can you help me with this issue? Mr. Speaker, I think I mentioned it before, public transit. We don't have enough service now in many areas, and there's many more routes and services that would have to be put on, especially for people without their own vehicles. Mr. Speaker, I don't think this isn't the right way to help the working poor get a better deal. I heard last evening some comments which I think suggested to me that many families that are having tough times would benefit from a few more hours of work. It's like, you know, well, I don't think a lot of people are sitting home wishing for another day to work, especially on Sunday. No, Mr. Speaker, more than likely they are wishing for a government that would respect them and bring forward a minimum wage that would give families a break today, right now. A government that would remove the HST, bring in a fair public-owned auto insurance plan, help seniors, help our students. Mr. Speaker, many of the working poor include single moms and dads who have had to work long hours, long hard hours, at more than one job. Many women work, 1.7 jobs, I think it is, and they're still living in poverty. I mean, they're just trying to get by. They have a problem finding daycare. They have a problem getting transportation. They're having a problem putting food on the table, buying sneakers for the kids to go to school, and school supplies, Mr. Speaker. How is Sunday shopping going to help the working poor? Daycare problem. Many mums are already having a hard time finding suitable daycare. Are the daycare workers going to have to work on Sunday?
Yes.
Are we going to all of a sudden find all these new daycare workers somewhere? Daycare workers are already poorly poured for the service they provide in providing care to our greatest resource. That's a whole other issue. We lack daycare spaces. I think if you added 2,000 daycare spaces on today, there still wouldn't be enough. The subsidized daycare wait list is, I believe, 2 years long to get on a subsidized daycare list, and that's based on your income. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I still receive calls myself from people asking me if I can provide child care services to children, because my name is still on the list up at Bel Air School in my neighborhood, so I did ask them if they could take that off. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, how will the government deal with that issue? Mr. Speaker, our workers are overburdened. Many workers work many hours of overtime, as it is, without the proper pay. There is a fear of saying no. I can't stress that. I believe it's there. That's what I'm hearing. Many workplaces have seen cutbacks in the numbers of employees, therefore putting a burden on those left to hold down the fort. There is the added stress that this brings to the workplace. Workers are increasingly being asked to spend more time at work. Many feel that they cannot complain. Plus, they're doing all this for time and a half based on minimum wage. How will we help out these workers? Mr. Speaker, our way of life, I guess, our way of living, we have to be careful in protecting that. What effect will Sunday shopping have on our way of living? We're already burning the candle at both ends. People are multitasking. They're juggling, trying to be a mom, a dad, a grandparent, a caregiver, all these things that we're all supposed to do, to the best of our ability. Volunteer on sports teams, home and school advisory councils, charitable organizations. These are things that, are stressing us out now. The folks that will end up working on Sunday must be protected. They must be able to retain a healthy way of life somehow. Maybe, Mr. Speaker, let's stop and smell the roses, okay? We already spend too much time indoors. Children are stuck in front of the TV. We're busy keeping our houses in order. We're busy working, out of the home lots of times, trying to catch up and work at home. And Sundays often become the day that you maybe can get out into your neighborhood and take part in nature in your neighborhood and farther afield. Take a walk in your neighborhood, maybe have a game of basketball at a local park. Just taking your kids to the local playground, sitting there and talking to your neighbors. I mean, these are all part of a way of life that we enjoy here in Nova Scotia. Getting back to nature, I think, is something, we just maybe take it for granted. We have an opportunity to hike, to canoe, to ski, to bike, to go to our beaches, and to visit other parts of the province that that's an important one, Mr. Speaker. I mean, other parts of the province rely on us to come and visit them, to boost their economy. They don't have maybe a big industry there in their town. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to read, and I'll table this. It was out of today's paper, a retailer on Sunday shopping. He says that's going to hurt his town. The head of Lunenburg's merchant says Sunday shopping has the potential to kill the retail trade in his town. Jamie Myra, chairman of the retail committee of the Lunenburg Board of Trade, said Monday the benefits that gift shop owners, restaurateurs, and bed and breakfast operators now enjoy in the UNESCO World Heritage Site will be lost if the province sanctions shopping 7 days a week. In other provinces, all it's done is created more business in the higher populated areas like Halifax that have big box stores such as Walmart and the Price Club. Mr. Speaker, we've got to remember that, we need to connect with our community. We need to meet up with our neighbors. We need to talk to our neighbors about issues that the community share in common. What's going on at our local schools? What's going on, even just with your neighbors and their families. So often, a lot of times now, Mr. Speaker, we don't even know our neighbors. Many people use Sunday as a day to prepare for the week ahead. It's a time to plan meals, to finish up school projects. Sometimes this is the only day available to catch up on projects around your house, painting or fixing, odd jobs, gardening. Connecting with the family. A lot of people use Sunday to visit their parents, their grandparents, their children, their friends. It's a day that a lot of people volunteer to visit seniors. Mr. Speaker, the fast lane is getting faster. Do we want to jump into an even faster lane? We're always rushing to get to work, rushing to pick our children up, rushing to prepare a meal, rushing to get ready for the next busy day. This is going to burden people that have to work 7 days a week because they may not feel that they can say no to anything else. Mr. Speaker, the plebiscite. I have to ponder why we would have a plebiscite on Sunday shopping when there are so many other issues that the people of Nova Scotia would rather have a say in, Mr. Speaker. And, I'll just list a couple of them, and I won't go into them because I did that at the very beginning, but long-term health care and auto insurance and education. Let's just give everybody their say. Let's have, this little mini vote on every issue. Even we could go as far as letting the school board do that. Or their principals. We could just go right down the line and do everything on site. Are we providing two kinds of services in this province, Mr. Speaker? And I'm going to wrap up. Are we providing a service, one for the haves in the province and one for the have-nots? To end this little speech, I would like to say, let us remember that while we drag Nova Scotia into the 21st century, we must ensure we do not drag those most vulnerable down at the same time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm pleased to speak to this bill. I got to say that I don't know. I mean, everything we do is politics, for sure, and this. And certainly some of the delivery of the politics, I guess, is done in a way to try to hide the politics of it. And certainly that's what the members of the opposition, for changes they'd like to see in legislation, then probably gives their view of the politics of any particular piece of legislation. But certainly this bill, I think, is before this House, I think because the Liberal caucus had made it an issue, which really didn't become an issue in the last election. But it was out there. It was on the periphery of what was going on. It never took off as a major item. It certainly wasn't anything that I ran into on the doorsteps in the last campaign. But it was just kind of hovering, a layer or two above, and you kind of wondered if you scratched deep enough just where this might show up. So it's there. it hasn't really been put to rest. In other words, this hasn't been taken off the agenda, an agenda it really never got on. And I think the government, in particular the Premier, would like to see this out of the way. And I got to say, I have to applaud the Liberal caucus for getting it there. That's for all the politics around it's getting there. This is what they do and what we do, and I don't know. I think they've done an okay job in trying to do that. Whether I actually agree with the issue at all, I applaud them for how they've stick-handled this issue. So I think this is more about crass politics than about an issue of the public, and I'll go on to explain why I think that. The last, I guess probably corporate research poll that I saw that this question had been asked, some put Sunday shopping somewhere in what some people would say in the 60% range. 60% of Nova Scotians want Sunday shopping. But if you actually looked at those numbers, there was about 40% of Nova Scotians were strongly in favor of Sunday shopping, and there was another 20% that were somewhat in favor of Sunday shopping. Now those who, for whatever reason, will be pro this, they just lumped those all together and said 60% in favor. But that wasn't actually a fair analysis of the information, because to me, if someone says, I'm somewhat in favor, that means I'm in favor of this under certain conditions. If those conditions are met, fine, I'm okay with it. If they're not met, then I'm against it. So really, as far as the people in Nova Scotia, I think we can really only say for sure that about 40% in that poll were interested. Now, I heard the member from Richmond talked about any of the polling done in Nova Scotia indicated that Nova Scotians overwhelmingly were in favor of Sunday shopping, and I'm not sure that I necessarily agree.
Region by region.
But what I am sure of is that I'd like to know. I would like to know in a very clear way that Nova Scotians are in favor of Sunday shopping or not in favor of Sunday shopping. And the plebiscite may do that. I have real concerns about whether or not it can. I echo the concerns that members of my caucus and members of the Liberal caucus have raised around the issue of putting this plebiscite with a municipal election, only because the turnout could be so poor. That could skew the results one way or another. But then the other argument, I suppose, would be, well, if it's that important an issue to Nova Scotians, they'll come out and vote. And certainly this is the cheapest way, I would say, to do the plebiscite. My views around plebiscites or referenda is they really should be used in questions of tradition. If you're going to proceed to change or think you want to change tradition or something of tradition in a province, that's when you should have input from the public as to whether or not they would agree with that. And this is, I guess, in terms of Sunday shopping, it's definitely in the periphery of that. I mean, how people shop in this province or having wide open Sunday shopping is not something that we've had, or lack thereof has been our tradition. Now, my one term that I've come to loathe in terms of politicians and what they do is to be told that you have to do this because it's inevitable. Well, I think that what's inevitable or not is based on where you want your people to go, what your goals are for the future. And if something isn't in their best interest, to say that it's inevitable, that has to be based on pretty sound information. And I'm not sure it's there, but what I think would push me to that edge, something that would push me to the point of saying, yes, this is something that we've got to look at. I think it's the comments by my colleague from Halifax Chebucto when he said that the present legislation probably wouldn't survive a court challenge under the Constitution. That throws this question purely into the legal realm. Whether or not some people's rights are being trampled on by our present legislation around Sunday shopping. And therefore, that is for the most part likely inevitable, that at some point someone is going to challenge our present law and it'll be struck down, and then we'd be to this position we are today. The fact, if people want to define that inevitability based on the premise that we're the last province in the country to do this, all the other provinces have done it, and because we don't do it, we're some kind of a backwater that's not up with the times, and therefore, in order to do that, we've got to bring in Sunday shopping. I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a minute. I don't buy it for a second. I say that if everybody else walked off a cliff, we don't need to walk off a cliff with them. We should determine whether or not any particular direction is good for us based on accurate information about what it is we hope it will achieve. And if it'll do that, then say yes to Sunday shopping or no to Sunday shopping because of how it impacts the lives of the people in our province, how it affects the lives of Nova Scotians. If people want to take a look at the impacts of Sunday shopping on any particular sector in other jurisdictions, then that would be a sensible thing to do as well, because just as there are those who feel that they are negatively impacted by the present legislation, then there may be just as many who feel that they will be negatively impacted by changing the legislation to allow for more Sunday shopping. Now, I want to tell members that I personally, I'm not struck on the notion of Sunday shopping, and my reasons around that have nothing to do really with keeping the Sabbath. I grew up in a home that both my parents worked. They worked shift work, so working on Sunday was a fairly common thing that my parents did, and I do accept the argument to have some protections for workers, but I don't think there's any way to avoid workers working on Sunday if we go down this road. And they worked at the airport, which the Honourable Government House Leader would be well aware of how people at the airport work, because it's definitely a place of shift work. Right. Now, with that said, I don't want to be embraced too much by the Honourable the Government House Leader, but to say that just because other people do, that makes it fine. That's not the road I want to go down. Other people do lots of other things because that's the job they're in. That is a requirement in order for them to carry out that particular function. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily that's a good reason for the retail sector to go down this road. Now, I appreciate the intervention by the Honourable the Government House Leader. He's not given me any information I don't already know, but I appreciate the fact he thinks I need to know it. do agree with anyone who says that this should not be left up to the municipalities. I do think this is a question that the government should take the lead on. I'm actually opposed to in a big way, to the government leaving the answers to big questions up to the municipalities. I think the province should show leadership and make decisions on those, and not have this hodgepodge of different approaches in different jurisdictions. Now, my constituency has a fairly large rural component. It has a really rapid growing urban sector, and I have to say, even if I look at the impacts of what we refer to as the corridor from Enfield to Shubenacadie, and look at the area around Elmsdale in particular, Mr. Speaker, the area around Elmsdale, we have 2 strip malls now, and a lot of business has moved. Has shifted out of Enfield to Elmsdale, and I think to a point, if you go to Shubenacadie, which was quite a nice little village. I noticed recently one of the stores has closed up, and I tend to think, are we going down this same road? When it comes to Sunday shopping, the businesses in my area, in every way, they have to compete with businesses in the HRM. Well, I mean, our proximity to the HRM is such that it's constant. And the municipality fights this battle in trying to attract businesses to Hants East when they're so close. The attraction to the HRM is so great. So they have a fairly large residential tax base, but certainly don't have the business, the commercial tax base that they'd like to have. And to a large degree, we see that as, partly due to the competition in the HRM, directly into the city, Bears Lake Industrial Park, Burnside Industrial Park, and the Aerotech Park at the airport, which is only minutes away from Enfield. So you do have to look at this in terms of what this means actually to businesses in my constituency. I've only ever had 2 people come to me to say anything in this issue, I think, in one way or another. They were business owners, and they were definitely opposed to Sunday shopping. And these were not people whose businesses were so small that they would have to work. They have a staff. It would be unlikely that they would be working on Sunday themselves. So as far as giving up their Sunday to work, that wasn't going to be an issue. What was the issue for them was, with Sunday shopping, they would assume that it would probably be their competitor would be open. And that would force them to be open. And as other members have said, there are just so many dollars to go around. They didn't see that they were going to really make anything by being open on a 7th day. Matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, what their thought was that they would have 7 days of expense and 6 days of income. That was their fear, that they would be open another day and yet not have 7 days worth of income. And some people will make the argument, well, it's their choice. It's a question of choice. For them, it's not a choice. They'll be forced into being open because their competitors will be open. And they'll have to try to maintain a little bit of that market share. And as much as people use the word choice, sure. I mean, as far as people going out to purchase goods on Sunday, they have the choice to go or not. I mean, they can go today and they can go on a Sunday in 6 months from then. But the businesses will have to really make a decision, I think, as to whether or not this is something they want to do at all, ever, or just never do it and try to ride it out and see how the numbers work out. The 6 weeks prior to Christmas may give some indication of that, although Christmas time is kind of a unique time. It's probably not a good barometer to use as a measure of what shopping patterns or purchasing patterns might be throughout other parts of the year, but it might give us a window into exactly where, where this goes. I do agree with a number of people who have spoken so far, Mr. Speaker, on the fact of protection for workers, in as much as it's possible to protect workers. If we look at the trend that corporations and even government and school boards and so on have gone with their workers, there's more permanent part-time, no benefits, et cetera, and we see this. And I think that unless workers are protected in legislation, certainly the employer sector is not going to guarantee that, and they're going to be up against it. You know, I think competition is going to get tougher, and it's going to be harder on them. The reduction from 48 to 40 hours, there's been two arguments for this. I think I buy the second argument more, but the first one is that workers would be opposed to this because they don't want to see a reduction in their hours. They want more hours. The other argument is that this would create jobs because employers wouldn't want to pay the overtime, so therefore they'll hire more people and not pay the overtime. So which way this will go, I'm not sure, but definitely I would like to see us change the way overtime wages are evaluated, and instead of purely being based on minimum wage, base it on the actual wage that people get. With the competition, and I'm not sure that we all realize this or all notice it. It's one of those things you have to have your antenna up to, I think, to pay attention to. But I think with the World Trade Organization and the globalization, we've had a corporate sector that has forced conditions of workers to the bottom. In other words, trying to be able to compete with labor in Mexico has really forced the workers in Canada to accept less and less and less, rather than to bring Mexican workers with more and more and more, and so that we create a level playing field by improving their quality of life, rather than create a level playing field by destroying the quality of life of Canadian workers. And I'd like to see some move in that direction, but certainly we're told a number of years ago that new technologies, Mr. Speaker, would give us more free time, would give us more leisure time, more recreational time, and this hasn't happened. People are taking their laptops home with them. They work, longer days, and it's certainly, as far as I can see, you take something as simple as a cell phone, which once upon a time, if people couldn't get a hold of you unless you were near a landline somewhere, and otherwise they had to put up with it until they got you. Well, now they got you whichever way you turn. You're working. If you have your cell phone, you're working while it's on. If they can get you with a landline, with your email, the hours that people work are increasing rather than decreasing. And I think that everywhere we can see this. I think about some of my teaching colleagues who have been hired in a 0.5 position as a teacher. Now, a 0.5 position as a teacher, that means you're half a teacher. And some of the ones I've known, depending on the schedule that they had to work, they might have 3 periods in a day out of a 6 period schedule or whatever. But if they had a class in the morning and they had a class the last period of the day, they were there all day. They weren't 0.5 of a teacher. They were 100% of a teacher, and or one of a teacher, and yet they were being waged as a 0.5 with whatever benefits would come with that. And so we see more and more is if we can get more and more out of the worker for less and less, I think we're going to try to do that. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we look out for teachers. Some will say that we already have Sunday shopping, and certainly to a degree, we definitely do. So the question of how we look at that in terms of what sectors of our economy that we feel comfortable with leaving them the way they are, or writing legislation that kind of puts them, more in the realm of other sectors. Some would say, well, we can order things over the internet, so Sunday shopping is already here, so let's just finish the job. To me, that's no different than the mail order catalog a few years ago, and we didn't necessarily call that Sunday shopping. We just called that being able to order in as quick a way as you could. And but if it's true that the 21st century means that Sunday shopping should be a component of that, I don't buy it. I would say that in the 21st century, Sunday shopping might be a component of that based on our present legislation, which if antiquated, will not stand up in court and or will not withstand a constitutional challenge. And for that reason, Sunday shopping is perhaps inevitable, but not on the more social side of issues around lifestyle or the way Nova Scotians perceive. Now, I've heard conflicting views as to whether or not people actually believe where the support for Sunday shopping is. It definitely seems to be the trend that those in the more urban and suburban areas, metropolitan areas, would say the majority of the people are in favor of Sunday shopping. That may be true, and that those in the more rural areas are against Sunday shopping. That was my thought. But information that I've received seems to indicate that perhaps this is shifting. That maybe in the more rural areas they are supportive of Sunday shopping. I think the mayor of Amherst, and I can't think of his name, has been quite vocal that he would like to have Sunday shopping. He's someone who is in that geographical position that he would be affected, or feel that his town is affected by Sunday shopping in New Brunswick, and that would have an impact on him. I mean, he's a politician. He's trying to be responsible, and he's trying to act in a way that he thinks it reflects the views of the people in his jurisdiction. And you can only applaud him for that, Mr. Speaker. Jerry Halley. I thank the honourable member from Queens for giving me the name of the mayor of Amherst, Jerry Halley. But this has been an issue that Mr. Halley has raised. I definitely, actually, I think he was in this house in the gallery one day in the spring, but definitely feels that the impact on Amherst has been significant enough because of Sunday shopping in Moncton, and he would like to see a change that would allow for Sunday shopping. So it would be quite interesting. One of my constituents had indicated to me that he had done a fair bit of research contacting businesses in Amherst to find out what their thoughts were. I mean, this individual was opposed to Sunday shopping, and his contention was that businesses in Amherst definitely were not in favor, that they were opposed to Sunday shopping. So I have conflicting views from that area. It's obvious that evidence wouldn't necessarily indicate that having Sunday shopping would have a significant impact on sales. In other words, having shopping for a seventh day. Of According to Stats Canada's regular report on retail trade annual sales, comparing 2002 to 2001, seasonally adjusted, increased by 5.4% in Nova Scotia and by 3.2% in New Brunswick, who had Sunday shopping when we didn't. And so the retail sales there did not rise as much as they did in Nova Scotia, where we still didn't have Sunday shopping. In June of 2003 compared to June of 2002, retail trade, again seasonally adjusted, increased by 2.3% in Nova Scotia and by 1.1% in New Brunswick. So the question of what the impacts would be to retail trade in Nova Scotia are still yet to be known. The question of whether the increase in retail trade, the percentage increase in retail trade in Nova Scotia is a product of the people who shop here, and it'll absolutely there'll be no impact on that percentage. In other words, comparing Nova Scotia with Sunday shopping to New Brunswick with Sunday shopping may very well mean that Nova Scotia would have an increase in its percentage of retail trade, and even above that of New Brunswick. And interestingly enough, Mr. Speaker, there should be some evidence to indicate what has happened over the years in those jurisdictions that have allowed Sunday shopping, and whether retail trade or the percentage of increase in retail trade has actually had any bump upward due to Sunday shopping. I would suspect that at some point it would not be a factor. That as my colleague from Dartmouth East had indicated, that people only have so much money, and so certainly at some point you're only going to spend so much money, and a question of whether Sunday shopping would indicate would be a factor in any of that. I would say probably over time it would not. People would go back to shopping patterns. Some of those patterns affected by Sunday shopping, and some not. So, but I think that the message I would like the government to have from me is that I'm not sure what Nova Scotians want. If this legislation would give an indication of that, then I definitely would welcome it, and I would like to see some protection for. I'd like to see some protection for Nova Scotia workers in this legislation, and actually, I'd like to see that more than anything, simply because I'm not sure of all the other impacts of Sunday shopping. I'm not sure what it will offer for Nova Scotians. Maybe when Nova Scotians have it, they'll say, "Gee, it wasn't what I expected." But and in terms of both the shopper and the business people, but for workers, I'm really concerned that workers are protected no matter what happens in the retail side. That the impacts on their lives are mitigated. So with those few comments, Mr. Speaker, I'm interested to hear what other members say and to watch the bill proceed through the stages, and hopefully actually look forward to law amendments to see what people have to say in that regard. So with that, I'll take my place. Thank you.
Thank you. Continue debate with the honourable member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's certainly a pleasure for me here this afternoon to be able to stand up and speak on this bill, Bill 2, the Retail Business Uniform Closing Day Act, and also the amendments around the Labour Standards Code. And this bill and the Labour Standards Code is all about Sunday shopping. I guess it really is what it comes down to, and it's not an issue that I've heard a lot from my constituents in Pictou West. In fact, during the last election campaign, very rarely did it come to my attention. Probably right down there on the bottom of issues that were important to people Once or twice, perhaps, I heard about it during the whole 30-day campaign. Occasionally issues like Sunday shopping were brought up, or occasionally issues like abortion or same-sex marriage or whatever, but very rarely were they actually brought to my attention. More important, there were issues, though, that people had over and over that were coming at us every day, issues around rural roads, the deplorable state that they're in, and the need for repair, the need to fix them up, and roads and bridges, ditches, bush cutting, culverts, on and on it goes. Patching, pothole repair, that was probably the number one issue. And probably right there with it was the concern over car insurance, the ever skyrocketing rates of the cost to repair or to keep insurance on your vehicle. So as far as an issue in this past campaign, it was really not an issue. Not saying it wasn't there, not saying it wasn't occasionally on people's minds, but issues around rural roads, car insurance, health care, the Sutherland Harris Memorial Hospital in Pictou. Fishermen had concerns that often I heard a lot more about than Sunday shopping, seasons and quotas and the cost of intergenerational transfer and so on. Seniors issues and schools, the importance of keeping schools open and available in our communities in rural Nova Scotia. But occasionally, somebody would ask me a question about Sunday shopping that I would respond to, but overall, it was probably one of the lower issues of importance in the past campaign. Since the campaign, lots of concerns, lots of questions. People asking me about social service issues, perhaps not having enough money to make ends meet, the check being gone before the end of the month, housing concerns. Educational issues, school bus routes, employment concerns, or how to apply for a disability pension, on and on, but not once a question around Sunday shopping. So, Mr. Speaker, I've been doing a little research on the history of Sunday shopping, and I thought maybe we'd have a little history lesson on how it has evolved here in Nova Scotia over the years and over the decades, really over the centuries of time. Going on the internet, I found some information that the first restriction to Sunday shopping was back as long as ago as 321 AD. Emperor Constantine restricted the Sunday observance laws. It placed prohibitions on business, legal proceedings, and various forms of public entertainment on the Lord's Day, while exempting things like agricultural and certain public and humanitarian acts. So that goes back to 321 AD, Mr. Speaker. So there's a long history of restricting Sunday closing, but it doesn't end there. We'll go on to some other issues that over the years, and certainly back to Roman times, but a lot of our history here in Canada dates back to English law and English common law, and there was an act passed in the mother of all parliament in Great Britain, dating back to, I believe it was the year 1488, and it was a law called the, 1448 Sunday Fairs Act, and that first tried to put restrictions on Sunday shopping. So it closed down Sunday solid so that people couldn't shop. And then in the year 1677, there was an act for the better observation of the Lord's Day, commonly called Sunday. And that was extended here to Canada, to our country. By that time, this country was settled. And in present day Quebec and Ontario, known then as Lower Canada and Upper Canada, these laws came into effect that put some restrictions on Sunday and kept it as a Christian holy day. Moving along to the 1800s, there was a law passed in 1805. It was called an Act to Prohibit the Sale of Goods, Wares, and Merchandise wine, spirits, and other strong liquors on Sundays. So there's continue to be restrictions on Sunday as the Sabbath, as the Lord's Day, and even in 1897 there was an act passed called Act to Prevent the Profanity of the Lord's Act, but that was struck down as being unconstitutional, and so that led us up to the 20th century, and there was a law passed by our Parliament in Ottawa. It was called the Lord's Day Act. It was passed in the year 1906, and that prohibited a number of activities on Sundays, selling or purchasing goods or real estate, carrying out any work, business, or labor for gain, and employing a person to do any contest or gain, prevented people from attending any performance or public meeting other than in a church, at which any fee is charged directly or indirectly. So as time went by in the 20th century, it found out that there were a number of exemptions that were needed, and various laws were passed in various provinces. A number of exemptions for works of necessity and mercy were passed, Mr. Speaker, that allowed such things as the selling of patent medicines and drugs, conveying travelers, carrying mail, and delivering milk. So those were sort of opt-out provisions from the Lord's Day Act that were allowed at that time. Moving along to more modern times, in the memory of many of us in the House here, in the 1960s and the 1970s, Quebec passed a law called the Commercial Establishment Business Hours Act in 1969, and Ontario had the Retail Business Hours Act in 1975. Manitoba passed the Retail Businesses Holiday Closing Act in 1977, and Newfoundland passed the Shops Closing Act also in that same year. So those were acts in the various provinces that set store closing hours and prohibited the conduct of certain retail business in each of those provinces on Sundays and on certain holidays. So really what it came down to was there was a common pause day, I think it was called, or originally coming out of the Lord's Day Act, and it allowed each province to have some jurisdiction over what was allowed to be open and what had to be closed. There was general support for that, partly because of religious reasons and partly because of just to protect workers in the retail sector from having to work 7 days a week. But all that changed, Mr. Speaker, in 1982 with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that struck down many of these laws as being unconstitutional, and it didn't require everybody, just because of a Sabbath Christian day, that they had to be closed. There's other religions in this country, and others that perhaps don't have a religion at all, and so it was seen to be unconstitutional because of the Christian Sabbath spreading to all people in society. But provinces scrambled and they found a way around that, and here in Nova Scotia we come up with the act that was passed here in 1989, the act that we're amending here today, the Retail Business and Uniform Closing Day Act. Over the last 10 or 15 years too, some provinces have tried to pass the jurisdiction down to municipalities and let them have jurisdiction in certain areas, and that has worked with some success, but overall it really hasn't worked because the neighboring municipality would be directly affected by what was going on in other areas. And I think that's true probably today in northern Nova Scotia, in the Cumberland County area, where another jurisdiction, in this case the province of New Brunswick, is directly affecting on residents within driving distance of retail shops that are open in Moncton or Dieppe or Riverview, and so especially in the town of Amherst, Cumberland County, Colchester County, and Mr. Speaker, probably in our county of Pictou, there's people that travel to Moncton on occasion on a Sunday to shop there at one of the malls. But at any rate, that's more or less a little bit of history of how we got here today, and I think it shows that over time, certainly rules have relaxed, and people are constantly changing in how they observe things. But anyway, dating back to 317 with Constantine right up to the present day, that's a bit of a history how we got here. As I mentioned earlier, this is an issue that is not on the front burner for sure of many people, but it's still out there as an issue of to some people. And there's pros and cons. There's some that support it absolutely, and there's others that are firmly opposed to it. People are probably opposed to it more so in the rural areas of this province than here in HRM. And I think it's partly because it is affecting a way of life that people have come to know and have become accustomed to for generations, really. You grew up, many of us in rural Nova Scotia perhaps grew up on a family farm, and Sunday was sort of considered the day of rest. Many families would get up and do the necessary chores on a Sunday, and then off to church they would go in their local community, whether it was a Presbyterian or United or Roman Catholic or whatever faith that they shared. But many families, that was their Sunday routine. And then after coming home, perhaps enjoying a meal together as a family, then Sunday afternoon was quite often set aside for visiting amongst family or friends or or whoever. But it was a time of rest. It was a time of relaxation. And quite often then after getting home from visiting on perhaps a Sunday evening, then the chores again had to be done. And but no extra work than what was absolutely necessary was really accomplished on a Sunday. But in our modern society today, there's very few farms left in our province, and most people are living in a more urban society, and they're more mobile, better means of transportation, better means of communication, and certainly the roots of farming communities or farming families are still there, but there's actually very few rural farms, so that routine has been broken. And today people are, it's a lot more fast-paced life, and they're living 6 days a week and now into 7 days a week, a much faster pace of life. And you do on Sunday what you do on Saturday, what you do on Friday, you do on any day of the week. And whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure, but it's changed our society for sure. Coming back to the Sunday shopping issue in particular, I do know that there's chambers of commerce in this province that have come out against the idea of Sunday shopping in our county, and I noticed today in the Chronicle Herald in Lunenburg County. I believe that's also true here in Metro, and it's Chamber of Commerce members are made up of business people and groups that organize and come together for a common purpose, mostly small and large business people. Many of those are retailers, and retailers in particular are, for the most part, small. Some of them are 1, 2, 3, half a dozen people organizations, and they're opposed to opening on Sundays because that is their day of rest. That's their pause day in which they can take some time to do the old-fashioned things again, I guess, visit and a chance just to get away from the work world that they've been accustomed to. I know personally, I have a brother that runs a small retail store right now in New Glasgow, and it happens to be a Christian bookstore. And I know when he was trying to negotiate his lease, he didn't want to be forced to be open on Sunday, and he tried to get something with the leaseholder that he wouldn't have to open on a Sunday if he didn't have to. I'm not sure if he was successful or not, but especially in that type of business, as running a Christian bookstore, I guess he wouldn't want to be open on a Sunday, and hopefully he's not going to be forced to do that, just that. This past Sunday, as you know, the Holland Square Mall in New Glasgow was open, Mr. Speaker, and I understand the grocery store attached there too was not open, but many of the smaller stores were open. Some of the larger retailers, clothing stores and so on, were open for business, but some people I know were actually looking for groceries on that day, and they were disappointed perhaps that the large retail grocery store was not open. It was not open in the town of Pictou either, but I do understand some of them were open in HRM and in the town of Truro. But again, there's some that look for it and some that don't. My experience, I guess, around Sunday shopping is well, very limited. I'm not much of a shopper, and whether it's Sunday or Saturday or any other day of the week, thankfully I have a loyal spouse that does a lot of the shopping in my family, including groceries and other necessities of life, perhaps even men's clothing. And so I'm thankful to her for doing a lot of the shopping. And so whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or Sunday, it's not going to make much difference to me personally, because I'm not a shopper per se. But I have had experience, Mr. Speaker, in retail, and for many years I did operate a retail business in Pictou County, and I guess going back to my earliest years in working, I did operate a retail garden center, fruit and vegetable market. It was located on the Trans-Canada Highway in Pictou County. It was known as the Green Thumb Farmers Market, and that's where I got my start in business. And that was about 30 years back. That business is still operating, still going today under the capable ownership of Jim and Jeanette Hermanson. But we operated, and I should mention, yeah, they did have a fire there a couple of months back, and near the 1st of August, and I know they've been rebuilding and getting ready to reopen very, very soon. So I wish them all the success and the best with opening the Green Thumb Market again. But my experience in retail was, of course, that we were open 7 days a week, and we operated seasonally 7 days a week, and then during the winter time, from January, February, and March, some winters we were closed, and some winters we were open just maybe 6 days a week, not open on Sunday. But it didn't make much difference in the wintertime. The business was slow, and but in the summer months, certainly from May right through till October, November, business was pretty brisk, and Sunday was one of our better days. And we scooped a lot of ice cream and served a lot of loaves of bread from our bakery, and apples and strawberries, and certainly a variety of flowering plants and landscape supplies. So it was a busy spot on a Sunday, and we would have extra staff on for that day. In fact, quite often 2 people scooping ice cream continuously was common. It was a popular item for Sunday drivers. But anyway, I have experience of working on Sunday, and it was a good experience. I'm sure maybe some members in the House here have stopped by farm markets or garden centers on a Sunday and scooped up ice cream or some other produce or farm products. And I guess that was one of the exemptions that's allowed under the present legislation, that farm businesses that sell fish products or farm products are certainly allowed to be open, as well as retail operations, I believe, of less than 4,000 square feet. Naturally, the businesses that were open were quite busy, and many a Sunday we were at our garden center or farm market, and business was literally booming. I suppose when the malls and other retail stores were closed, that was a factor, and it gave something for people to do on a Sunday. I guess my most recent retail business was my wife and I ran a business in New Glasgow called Birds and Blooms, and we were in a shopping mall open to the outside wall, the inside and outside to the mall, and we had the option to be open on Sunday or not. And but all the other stores in that shopping mall were closed, the big retailers and the small stores, and so we chose not to be open. The drugstore beside us was open, I think, 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon, but more than anything, we needed a day of rest. We needed a day of pause, and that was our opportunity to perhaps catch our breath and just to a chance to go for a Sunday drive or go visiting or whatever we want to do. But so for small retailers, the mom and pop operations out there, people do need a break. They just can't go 7 days a week or 31 days a month or 365 days a year. And when you only have the 2 people running it, or maybe 3, you know, it's too much of a burden on those people to have to operate that business 7 days a week. And in reality, is there any more business to be had anyway? Are you going to get more dollars or more revenue coming in by being open 7 days a week as compared to 6? People only have so much money to spend. There's only so much dollars in our whole economy, and really, are they going to spend it in 6 days anyway? And the 7th day is just spreading it out over an extra period of time, which naturally there's extra costs for wages and heat and other overhead that a business would have. So I don't favor Sunday shopping from the point of view of the small retailer. People need a chance to catch their breath and to rest and not be open on that day. Does Sunday shopping work? Well, there's mixed reactions to that. There's mixed evidence that some people say yes, you do more business, or some people say no, you don't. You do the same in 7 days as you do in 6. The most recent example in New Brunswick, Mr. Speaker, was the stats from 2002 as compared to 2001. As you know, they've had Sunday shopping in New Brunswick for a couple of years now, and seasonally adjusted, the retail trade in Nova Scotia, the sales increased by 5.4% in Nova Scotia in 2002 as compared to 2001, and but only in New Brunswick went up 3.2%. So, does Sunday shopping work? Well, it looks like in comparison Nova Scotia to New Brunswick that more business was done in 6 days in Nova Scotia than in New Brunswick in 7 days. And looking at this year, Mr. Speaker, in 2003, compared to 2002, again seasonally adjusted, Nova Scotia's retail sector increased by 2.3%, and in New Brunswick, the increase was 1.1%. So in both those past 2 years, Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotia's retail economy has outperformed New Brunswick considerably, and where we have here in Nova Scotia 6 days a week shopping, in New Brunswick there's 7 days a week. So, so there's some evidence that perhaps Sunday shopping doesn't work from the point of view of dollars done by retailers or in the economy. Now, one of the reasons, though, that some people want Sunday shopping, of course, is not necessarily because of what the extra revenue, the extra money generated by retailers, but it's simply for a convenience. You know, the consumers like the idea of being able to go shopping whenever they want, and if they'd like to go shopping on a Sunday, you know, as compared to a Saturday or a Tuesday or whatever day of the week, they just like that convenience. So that's one of the main arguments from a consumer's point of view. They just like the idea of shopping at any time of the day or night, I guess. Although, as we all know, we've gone to retail shops in areas where on a Tuesday night it can be pretty slow, or a Monday morning, Friday noon. There's other times in the week when business is down and there's not much happening, and so some of that really is going to be made up on a Sunday, but it's just spreading out over 168 hours, what could be done in 144 hours in the 6 days of the week. Another reason, though, that some people said if we are going to go to Sunday shopping, we have to protect the workers that are out there. And I know from having employees myself, you had to work with them and try to accommodate their individual concerns and needs. And sometimes somebody would have a dental appointment on a Tuesday afternoon, or a need to go to a baby shower on a Saturday night or whatever. And so you had to work with your staff to try to find hours that were convenient for them, and that was true with Sunday as well. Usually we had to ramp up a bit our staff on a Sunday, and but everybody knew when they came to work at our place of business that was expected of them. They had to work on Saturday and Sunday, but we made sure they had a couple other days off somewhere through the week. But it must have been difficult this past weekend when the government did proclaim that Sunday shopping would be held, and on that short a notice, I would think it would be difficult for employers and employees both to, at very short notice, to have to work this past Sunday to accommodate the Sunday openings here in HRM and in Colchester and Pictou counties. But one of the main concerns that we've had is certainly in this legislation is that workers are protected, and as you know, many retail workers in particular work for $6, $7, $8 an hour. That's the standard rate that's out there at the moment. Some are earning $10 or $12, but many earn less than that. And as I mentioned, I think it's important that there be legislation or protection in place for the retail worker, so that they're not forced to work 7 days a week, and not all employers may be as accommodating perhaps as some, and the protection has to be there in law, that they don't have to work long continuous hours just because the employer is going to be open to the public. Many stores, of course, will, if Sunday shopping does come, will feel obligated to have their shop open, even though they may not wish to. The mom and pop store that's in the mall, there certainly should be protection that they don't have to open if they don't wish to, or the retail store that's downtown or on a separate location. Absolutely, they should have the option not to open, and the same with the employee. They should have the option, not to have to work on a Sunday if they don't wish to. As I mentioned, many employees are getting $6 or $7 an hour. Some are getting more than that. And one of the provisions here I've seen in the Act is that for overtime, right now it's 48 hours in Nova Scotia. If you work over and above 48 hours, you get time and a half. We're saying that 48 hours is a long work week, and I know people that have worked 60 hours a week, but they work very hard and they're dog tired at the end of that week, and there's more to life than work, and they should be able to have, if they so choose, the option of working for less hours than that. But anyway, over 48 hours, they get time and a half. Most provinces have gone to 40-hour work weeks, and some even less than that, 35-hour work week. And we're saying the time and a half provisions should be brought back to 40 hours. The other troubling aspect of the bill is the idea that retail workers, when they do get time and a half, it's at the minimum wage. And as you know, the minimum wage in Nova Scotia now is slightly over $6 an hour, I believe. So time and a half on that, if they're earning $12 an hour or $10 an hour, they're certainly they're losing out on their regular pay. Time and a half at minimum wage just doesn't seem fair. The other mention in this bill is the idea of a plebiscite, and plebiscite to be conducted in conjunction with the municipal elections. That's scheduled for the third Saturday of October next year. And at that time, municipal politicians will be on the ballot. And I guess I know from past experience, Mr. Speaker, having been a municipal councillor for about 10 years, that when you go through municipal elections, it's hard to generate some interest sometimes, especially if there's acclamations in a number of districts, and it's hard to get the message out there that there's an election going on at all. Whether it's fair or not to put a plebiscite on top of that, that's a provincial issue that people are concerned about. We find that it's hard enough to keep the public's interest in a municipal election, and now they're going to have a provincial issue here on Sunday shopping legislation that may take away from their municipal concerns. Of course, on the other hand, I suppose, there's always an upside to almost any argument, is that with the low voter turnouts that we have in municipal elections, maybe that will allow more people to get interested in, and the Sunday shopping issue might drag them into having more interest in the municipal affairs, and it may actually increase voter turnout on polling day. So it's there's a plus and a minus here of whether having the plebiscite during the time of a municipal election is the right time or not. The other aspect of that is the idea of having a plebiscite at all. I think if this one should go, this is only the third time in the history of this province, I believe, that there will be a plebiscite. There was one back somewhere in the 19th century, and then there was another one, I believe, here in the province around alcohol and prohibition somewhere in the 1920s. But there's not been a plebiscite for 80 years or so in Nova Scotia, and it's certainly a different way to try to bring in legislation in this province. Not saying it won't work. It's certainly grassroots democracy, and it allows people to have a first-hand say on an issue of importance to Nova Scotians. So where do we go from here, though? Like I said, some people are in favor of Sunday shopping and some are not. And but what's going to be next? If we open up the full Sunday shopping to all types of retail, are liquor stores going to be open on Sundays? Will that be the next thing that's going to be allowed? Is this legislature going to meet on Sundays? Are we going to be sitting here 7 days a week? Is Sunday going to be any different than any other day of the week? Will the government offices be open Saturdays and Sundays? Will you be able to go buy your driver's license on a Sunday? Or, of course, as members of this House, Mr. Speaker, many of us do work 7 days a week right now. We're here in this house 5 days a week, and then we go back to our ridings on the weekends. There's people that want to meet with us and on issues of concern. Sundays, quite often, we're trying to catch up on our correspondence and again, phone calls. People know how to get hold of you as an elected member, and the phone is ringing, and so there's issues there. Any of the 7 days of the week that you're being contacted. But overall, though, it can be a time, sort of to rest and relax and maybe catch your breath a little bit. I know for myself on a Sunday, it's about the only day of the week you get to sleep in a little bit and get up on a Sunday morning and perhaps take the dog out for a walk, and go to church. In my community, it's about 5 miles from where I live, and but it's a good opportunity to just to take life a little bit easier and take time to smell the roses. But also a chance to maybe get caught up on a little bit of paperwork. And for me, I know quite often I'll sit down and write my weekly column, having the weekly paper, and just to report to constituents back home. But it's still, there's work to do, but it's also a chance to relax and rest, and just to get the opportunity to, find out what life's all about. Work is one thing, but if you work all the time, life is going to pass you by. So that's one reason we have Sunday to spend with family and friends, and to enjoy some time with the ones we love. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, I think I'm going to wrap things up here at this point, but it's an issue that really hasn't been addressed by a lot of my constituents. It's not a pressing matter. People aren't coming to me and saying that we want Sunday shopping or we don't want Sunday shopping. It's sort of a mixed bag. There's a yin and a yang, and people are all over the map. But again, it's not the number one issue that I'm hearing about. There's so many other important issues out there. So I'm looking forward to the law amendments stage, and going on to further debate on this bill, and I'll look forward to participating at that time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't anticipating getting it up today on this bill, but I'm compelled to now, because after listening to the members of the NDP talking about this bill, I'm still confused as to whether or not they're for the bill or against the bill. I don't like the government's position on the bill, but at least I know where the government stands on the bill. And certainly all Nova Scotians know where the Liberal Party stands on the bill, but nobody in Nova Scotia can figure out where the NDP stand on the bill. We've heard people get up and knock the bill, and yet at the end of their speech they would say, well, it's inevitable anyway, so we're going to support it. Now that's some support now. The only reason they can use for supporting the bill at the end of the day is the fact that it's inevitable anyway. Now, when this bill comes to a vote, and it will Thursday on second reading, we're going to find out where the NDP stand on this bill, person, member by member by member, because there will be a recorded vote on this bill Thursday, and we're going to find out. The jig is up with the NDP. We're going to find out whether they favor Sunday shopping or whether they don't. And we're going to know that Thursday. So Nova Scotians who are watching out there, take note, tune in Thursday, so you'll really find out where the NDP stand on this bill. And that's what's going to happen Thursday. Now, this bill is before us here today, Mr. Speaker. It wasn't supposed to be back, according to the Justice Minister, to the year 2005. But lo and behold, it's here. The reason it's here is because Nova Scotians want it. 81% of Nova Scotians said they wanted Sunday shopping last December in a poll. What is it about that the NDP doesn't understand? The Tories understand it because they brought the bill here because of it. They had no intentions of coming back with this bill until they looked at public opinion, Mr. Speaker. And when they looked at public opinion, they said, we're offside, the public opinion here, and this bill has to come before the House. And that's why it's here. The member for Cumberland North, the member for Cumberland South, they want this bill to be dealt with in this House. The member for Truro Bible Hill wants this bill to be dealt with in this House. And I'm sure that before this bill is over, I would like to hear, and I'm sure all members of the House would like to hear, some government intervention on this bill Thursday as to whether or not they individually would want this bill to go through. Because not only are the NDP going to be flushed out on this bill on Thursday, but the Tories are going to be flushed out on it as well. Maybe a good opportunity for the Premier to get out from under on this bill, Mr. Speaker, by telling his people you can have a free vote. that may be his way out. Or skip the session altogether so he won't have to fess up as to what his intentions are in this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill is before the House because of public opinion and public opinion only. We're on record as favoring it. You know, here we are in the year 2003, Mr. Speaker, discussing whether somebody can buy groceries on a Sunday afternoon, when in my hometown they can go to the casino at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and gamble instead of going to church, but they can't buy a loaf of bread in the afternoon in the grocery store. You know, here I hear the NDP saying 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 wrongs don't make a right. So if you follow that logic, that member will be voting against the bill. The member from Dartmouth North will be voting against the bill Thursday because he just told me the 2 wrongs don't make a right. So pay attention to those people who are watching this from Dartmouth North. Pay attention to where their member votes Thursday, because he just told this House that 2 wrongs don't make a right. So I would extrapolate that to say that he's not going to vote for this bill on Thursday. Now, pay attention to what he does Thursday. Because, as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage Nova Scotians to pay attention to where the NDP sit as a caucus on this bill. We've yet to hear anybody in that caucus, including the leader, come out in favor or against this bill. It's just like the other bill is over in law amendments right now. It's like that bill, it's like this bill, and it's like other bills that come before this House. The NDP want to be all things to all people in this province, and they can't make up their mind which road to go down. And I got to tell you, Mr. Speaker, it didn't work for them in the last 2 elections. It's not going to work in the next election. I can tell you that. Mr. Speaker, the NDP came close a few years ago, but when Nova Scotians decided that they might have a chance of forming government, they walked away from them. And they'll do the same thing the next time around in Nova Scotia. But, Mr. Speaker, I know my time is limited this afternoon, but I'll be back Thursday to have a few more words to say about this particular bill. You know, it's interesting. We wanted to get this bill, Mr. Speaker, over to the law amendments so we could find out what Nova Scotians want to do about this bill. Find out what interest groups are going to come to law amendments and maybe make an impression upon the committee and eventually in the whole House here on members of this legislature. But no, the NDP want to filibuster the bill over here in second reading. Every single member has got up here and spoke on this particular bill, and not one of them have said where they stand on it. One member changed her mind 3 times when she was on her feet. 3 times. Now, if her constituents can figure that out, Halifax Needham, the member for Halifax Needham, changed her mind 3 times on that bill in the same hour that she was up. The same hour. Now, was that consistency? You know, all I want to know, and Nova Scotians want to know, where does the NDP stand on this bill? Are they going to vote for it? Well, we're going to find out in second reading Thursday what they're going to do. We're going to find out. The jig is up Thursday. You know, all the suspense will be gone. They'll either have to vacate their seats or say yay or nay on second reading on this bill. Then we'll worry about, in law amendments, about how we're going to improve this bill, which I hope will come. But I will adjourn the debate now, Mr. Speaker, and come back on a future day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a motion to adjourn debate. Is it agreed? It's agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say yea? Yea. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, move the House to now rise to meet again tomorrow at the hour of 2 p.m. and sit until 6 p.m. and call upon the member for Cape Breton South, the House Leader, to give the business for tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, we'll be calling resolutions number 173 and resolution number 246, and I move that we do now adjourn.
Thank you. The motion is that the House do adjourn till 2 p.m. tomorrow. Is it agreed? Agreed. It's agreed. Would all those in favor of the motion please say yea? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. The House is adjourned till 2 p.m. tomorrow. We have now reached the moment of interruption. Subject of this evening's debate is therefore be it resolved that the Ham government move immediately towards a full review of all benefit schemes from offshore resources so that all Nova Scotians can start to see much-needed benefits coming into the province. I'd like to recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to use my time allotted to me tonight to speak about, as the motion says, the benefits that should go to Nova Scotians. Now, as you know, most of us in this province are well aware that this resolution has been prompted by yesterday's announcement by ExxonMobil that they have let their contract for a compression deck, and they've done it offshore. And you know, that by itself is I think an extremely hard blow to the industry here in the province. And if it was by itself, like I said, as bad as it appears, that it would be a hurdle that we could get over fairly quickly, I would assume. But I think